Welcome everyone to Plastic Cards Podcast. Today we have a very special episode. We have guests Kalin and Yoonsong from Funktronic Labs. We're here to talk about Wave Boi, their upcoming project, where they've come, what they've worked on before. Glad to have you on the show, guys. Really appreciate it.
Hello.
Thank you for having us on.
Awesome. So we first kind of caught a glimpse of the genius behind Funktronic Labs by seeing Wave Boi. It's just really amazing looking. Almost like an homage to like action games of the early 2000s with like Tony Hawk and the Wave Race, and it just looks like a love letter to that. I want to get your take on like where did you start with that idea? Then we'll get into what came before that. But I want to just hear like where did the idea of Wave Boi come into play?
Wave Boi, I think we're all really big fans of, I guess, old school skating games, and between projects we experiment with a lot of different stuff, and we had a little water simulation, and we were kind of playing with some miniature boat stuff, and then we started adding some half pipes and ramps and tricks, and like, man, we need more games like this, and then we just went out of control and added everything.
Nice. Yeah, you can tell that it's already like visually, it's such a love letter, to these older games that I myself grew up with. And I want to get your takes on, the announcement of a Tony Hawk remaster too. Like there was a void in these past 5-10 years where those games were on top, and there's now this opening, and people, forgot how much they love it, or I didn't forget, I've been day one, but now I think the mainstream is really catching on to, like we do want this style of game again.
Yeah, I think when we started development, we kind of looked around and we're like, we play a lot of these games still at home, and there's a couple of small online servers, but like everybody just wants it. And I think maybe the excitement around the series fell off, not for people's lack of want, but I guess the series weren't really, I guess, speaking to people's needs.
Right.
And so we just went all in on it, and I guess now, like 2 and some years later, I guess other people have caught on that like people want this kind of game again, and there's kind of a lot of skating games starting to come out, and I guess obviously the Tony Hawk is definitely the big one, and you can just see how excited people are for it. So I think we're at the dawn of a kind of a arcade skating renaissance.
Can't wait. Nice. So yeah, I've talked about how I do want to dip into, where you've come from, because there's a lot of titles under your belt, a lot of cool VR titles as well that are super interesting, really out there, and just like visually stunning. So as far as taking it back even further, what are the paths you took? What started you on the path rather of game development, whether it's you, Kalin, and also you, Yoonsong?
I guess I'll start. When I was 15, someone told me about this like programming stuff. And I was like, what is that? It's weird. It doesn't make sense. And then I got a compiler installed on my PC, and then I pretty much just dropped out of school and everything and just programmed at home like every waking moment. Nice. And then just started working in the industry. Just, making like Pac-Man, and then like 2D games, and then 3D games, and just trying to make helicopter sim. Just kept making more and more complicated things. And then I worked at a studio in Australia for a while on some MMO projects, and then came to Japan and worked on the Pixel Junk series. And I guess that's where me and the co-founder of Funktronic Labs met, and we started doing lots of side projects, and we're like, let's just go make them real projects, so we can spend all our time on it. And then we came to the US and kicked off Funktronic Labs, and I guess we started with Nova 111, like indie puzzle game, and then I think we moved into VR a lot, I guess, because it was really fresh. I think a driving like heart of the studio is about like new technology and like interesting art, and so like VR is a really good place to experiment with that. And yeah, I guess now we're at Wave Boi, which is not a VR game, but we try to pack it full of lots of interesting technology. Like the whole water is like a kind of dynamic water simulation on top of completely custom rendering systems. And yeah, we just went a bit crazy with custom technology and trying to find an art style that's different and fresh, as well as a fun game.
And you, Yoonsong, your origins and how did you get into game dev?
Yoonsong?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I was so
No problem.
enthralled by Kalen's answer.
Yeah, I just stare at him the whole time, and I just, mind goes blank.
I mean, he's a He's a dreamboat. I'm actually, this is like, I think this is my 20th year in the industry now.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Dang.
I actually started off as like from the bottom of the bottom back in the day when entry level was a QA tester. So I was a QA tester for Activision, and along the way, like one of my first projects I actually worked on was Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3.
Wow.
And so I got promoted very, very quickly because I was really good at finding bugs, and eventually I started leading my own teams. And it got to a point where I got passed over promotion a couple of times to where I realized, what, maybe I should try to figure out another way into the industry as well. So I quit for a little bit, went to art school to learn how to, develop video games, ran out of money for tuition, came
Yep.
back to LA and, joined 2K Games. And then eventually what happened was I was looking for a new opportunity, ended up working at Hyperkin, which is a peripheral and kind of like accessories company. I initially was just supposed to be like a tech analyst, and eventually, what happened was I realized they didn't have a marketing department, and they were actually creating all these products that didn't really make sense. So I suggested to them, hey, maybe you guys should have a marketing guy to kind of help you research some of the things that are coming up. And they're like, do you want to do it? So I'm like, all right. So, like, when I first joined Hyperkin, I basically was in charge of like building up their social media profile, doing all the press outreach and everything like that. And I was managed to able to kind of build that company up to respectability. And also, one of my proudest achievements is I actually was part of the development team that actually developed our own retro console, the Retron 5.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
that was one of my like really big things. And then afterwards, I joined Akupara Games as the marketing director, and now I'm the co-founder of the company. And how I actually crossed paths with Kalin and Funktronic Labs was really crazy. In 2018, during Indiecade, we were showcasing a game called Desert Child, and right next to us, they were actually showing the prototype of Wave Break for the first time. And the minute I saw it, I'm like, oh my God, this game is awesome. I love it. Is there any way I can figure out a way I can work with you guys? And then last year in May, I actually officially joined on as their marketing director. And, you know, Kalen and the team are very, very modest. These guys are really, really good at what they do. Our team might be a little bit small, but like I said before, I think even today's stream, like in Game of Thrones, you have that little girl Lyanna. She says like we're few, but we're mighty, and that's how I kind of look at Funktronic Labs. Like everyone is so talented. Everyone has so many like cool things that they bring to the table. So for me to be able to kind of it's an honor to be able to kind of join this team because like every day I would look into the what they're doing and I'm like, this is awesome. We gotta build something on this. And they're like, nah, it's okay. We'll just work on it a little bit more. But these guys make some incredible things, and I'm just so fortunate to be a part of this team.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, you can tell just like seeing going through the list of stuff you guys have accomplished. It's pretty radical.
Definitely.
Nice. Now I was curious. Before I go into my next question, you mentioned Yoonsong about being starting out with bug testing and then getting promoted. What are some of the things you found with bug testing? How did you get to the top of that hierarchy? With like, you mentioned you were faster at finding these bugs. Are you just kind of really trying to test the fringes of a level and like pick it apart? Like, what's the route that you take with that?
Well, initially, when you go through a playthrough, you kind of want to figure out exactly when certain events happen or certain time things are going on. But ideally, like what I try to do when I look into game testing is to try to figure out all the things that people would do, or even maybe a 5-year-old would do that potentially might break the game. So I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it was 15 minutes of me just jumping into a corner, just trying to find a loose seam.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just be me redoing the same thing over and over again until I'm able to kind of find the pattern recognition to where I can find exactly what the root of all these like problems of the bugs are. And so, for me, when I actually got into Activision, I wanted to make a very good impression. So, the first 3 months, I just basically, you know, put all my efforts into trying to find bugs, and then like the rest of the other team, I don't want to disparage them, but then like they were kind of going at a different kind of pace, so that all of a sudden when they saw that like after about 2 3 weeks, all the bugs for the game where it's like 60% of the bugs were input by me, and then like people start to kind of recognize like the rest of the team, we kind of created this like little competitive kind of thing in between us, to where we're constantly trying to find good quality bugs, to where like it got to a point our team was able to actually ship out games with very very minimal bugs, and so we were very proud of that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've always been very curious on the actual process of doing that, and I think people on the outside think of playtesting. There's multiple aspects of it, but they think playtesting. Oh, I get to just kind of hang out, play a game. No, like you really have to test this and throw everything against the wall and see where the problems are coming up, because I mean that's there's a lot going on there.
The movie Groundhog's Day. It's like QA testing is like an episode of like Groundhog's Day. Pretty much you're going to be doing the same thing over and over and over again, to the point where it's going to drive you crazy. But the thing is you always want to kind of have that analytical mind when you're actually playing the game. And so that's what like some of the things that I would say to other people when they're actually testing it out, is that like when you have that type of mindset of doing something over and over again, it gets to the point where you can kind of start to figure out like different tangents that you can go on to find different kind of like issues.
I'd actually be very curious to see how that sort of mentality has to change for a game like this, because for these really high precision games, you think like back in the day you're playing Tony Hawk, all the times where you think you press that button just in time and you think it's the game's fault. Whereas like when I was watching you do the demo, there are some points where it's like, was that the game that messed up, or was that you just pressed the button wrong? And I imagine that's probably an incredibly hard line to toe. I don't know if you have a way of kind of capturing frames and being able to see input data to really be able to tell if it was a bug or not.
I guess
for the most part, it's not a bug, because I would probably say it's a user error from my end. I'm very impatient when it comes to some of these things, so sometimes you see me double tapping the button, so it's mostly user error.
I think when we're working on these features, I think all of us try to be like really good at the game. So as soon as something is off, because as we're changing things, we're breaking other things. So every day we're playing the game, and sometimes it'll be like, man, there's like a frame delay on the like manual start, or something like that, or it's like, oh, the like hit detection for going over a rail is like a little bit lower than it should be. Like, did something change? I think just trying to play the game at a high level makes you sensitive to that kind of stuff. So when you're just doing a normal playthrough, you feel that something's off, and then like when we actually go analyze things like that, we use a lot of like slow the time down to like 1% and like check the frames and see if there's actually something wrong. And it's like, oh, someone added a new like particle effect that actually delays the timing of some behavior, and then we fix it. But I think just playing a lot and playing at a high level, you just, those things feel out of place like intuitively as soon as you introduce those bugs into the game.
And I imagine that's especially important because like you compare it to like the worst first-person shooter player is going to be a bad first-person shooter player. The worst Tony Hawk player is still absolutely insane because people push these games to their limit. So you're going to be doing
50 million point combos.
Exactly. You're at least going to try.
I think we might have made it a little bit harder than some of the old Tony Hawk. But then again, when I go back and play some of them, they're kind of brutal. I think we have more ways to be high skill in Wave Break. So the way you control the bolt rotation in the air is a bit more subtle because it's kind of 3D now, right? So you can roll as well as doing the shooting and a couple other different like jump techniques. I think there's a couple of extra things on top. So I think the really good players with the hyper fast mega brains will have a good time.
Fair enough. Something I wanted to cover real quick though, going in. So I noticed one thing, your kind of company, about you says, about creating super high quality interactive experiences, intersection of art, design, and technology. Mm-hmm. And you really see that in your kind of whole portfolio. supporting also, like, it seems like there's no limit to what technology you'll support. Like, you support Leap Motion, and that's the one that's like I wish more people did. Um, but you kind of mentioned some of the technology. I'd be curious what kind of technologies in this game. You mentioned the water. I noticed kind of watching the demo, when you get close to like the sides of something, you can really see it sloshing around in a way that you don't typically see in a lot of games. What can you kind of tell us about the cool technology in this game?
Yeah, I think the water is definitely like the big hitter tech wise. The first version of the water that was mostly the same as it is now didn't take so long to make, but the gap between like the simple version of that and the final one, it's a lot of work, and there's a lot of an enormous amount of like cleverness in doing it so that it runs fast, right? Because it's all on the GPU, so we got to save lots of GPU time for the rendering of the actual game, like not just the water, so I think it was just like Wave Break tech wise is a very deep dive, pun kind of intended, deep dive on the water tech. Um, and most of that is just in going from like a basic water sample to it's a huge map. It doesn't take up much GPU time. The rest of the game's there as well. Hundreds of objects like bouncing around in the water. The way things like move physically on the surface of the water, and then on top of that, all the rendering techniques to make it, I guess, look like nice water, not just regular water. Um, on top of being kind of a stylized water, it's not exactly realistically modeled. Like a lot of the way the rendering works is not. I guess it's similar to real water, but it's different where it looks cooler. So all of that, and then making it fit in like a tiny slice of time, so that the rest of the game can render. Like that's definitely the big hitter tech wise for Wave Break. On top of that, I think the main focus tech wise was rendering, just to get a custom style with I guess a similar concept of a very basic toon shader, but then worked on for a long time with a lot of subtlety to give it that very specific feel, because we want the game to look different to other games.
I was going to touch
Definitely
on as well. You mentioned, yeah, and you mentioned the style. You guys were you're kind of developing this visual style with the other previous games, where these very cute animals in this kind of this universe I wish I lived in physically. But what's the inspiration for that? How are you like managing these different points that you're kind of pulling from little bits, and then creating this almost like connected universe with how you have these previous games, the characters in those games, and Wave Break? It's like they almost kind of coexist in this universe you've built. Where do you mine the inspiration for that?
I guess because it's the same people working on the game, there's some kind of like connected essence across them all, even if they're different universes. I guess our previous game, Stadia Taxi, was a very cutesy, like happy, friendly, but secretly really difficult, like flying VR game, like Crazy Taxi style game. But I guess the Wave Break characters were kind of going to be those characters, but I guess it kind of evolved out into its own identity. And I don't know if there's any like great amazing master plan for that. We just kind of went with what felt right, and like I don't know, kind of go with the flow of what it feels like the game should be. And it's like, as that like vision of what the end product looks like, I guess, gets stronger within the team, we just kind of all like together go in that direction. So it started off very cutesy, but then like it needs to be, need that 80s Miami Vice theme, and like guns and crime and cops and robbers, and adult content, and just kind of go all in on that.
I think
It's evolution, I guess.
I think collectively as a team, like we basically take a lot of input from everybody, or like we get feedback from everybody. And so like what we wanted to do is to not only show our personality, but to inject the type of humor that we usually have. So, a lot of these characters, little quirks, little things are just all part like ideas that were given to us from each member from like the different teams. So like, it's definitely one of those collaborative experiences when we come to like trying to create something like this.
Yeah, I think when you see something in the game, I guess, I don't know if you guys have seen the city level yet, but there's like posters everywhere, and it's like you'll see something on one of those posters and it'll make you laugh, but it's like it wasn't really planned. Someone was just like, haha, wouldn't it be funny if like this was on a poster, stuff like that. So it's really just like when the creativity like bubbles up at the moment, just like put it in.
Yeah. Speaking of other levels, I was very surprised kind of watching through. You guys have shown off a ton of content for this, just a lot of levels, and I know it sort of seems like there's a multiplayer aspect. I'm not fully sure at this point how it fits into the single player aspect. Is it going to be kind of the same levels for all that? Is this kind of like a decent way in? Because that's kind of how it's looking from what
Yeah.
I've seen.
So the single player campaign, it's the same stages, but I guess there's some elements in the stage that are a little bit adjusted and like on and off. And I guess the single player campaign is more about here's a list of objectives to clear. It's very like classic skating, like do this combo line, get this many points, get a 6 score, stuff like that. So that's kind of like a I don't know. It's a comfortable way to just jump in and start playing. On top of that, we have like some more story missions that are a little more complex with, there might be some like gunfighting going on or some NPCs like doing more active stuff. Uh, but it's the same levels, and most of the time you're just playing them like free skate or some of the other game modes online or offline with friends or random matchmaking.
I think we also on our end too, we want to be able to kind of show how large the levels are, because I think initially when we like are expected to launch, we're probably gonna like look toward maybe 4 initial levels. And to most people, it might not seem like much, but when you actually like traverse each of these levels, they're like really, really huge. And so, just to kind of like let people know that like this is what you have to expect. We want to make sure we're completely transparent when it comes to these type of things. We don't want to oversell anything. We don't want to push anything that's may or may not happen. But what we will say though is like on top of these initial levels, there are kind of plans for us to kind of roll out some additional content as we continue forward. We have already kind of an idea as to what this content is, but we've said it multiple times, even on Reddit and even to directly on our Discord, that like we will present somewhat of a roadmap like after a couple of weeks, after we kind of observe everyone's behavior and kind of analyze a couple of things. And then once we put the roadmap up, more than likely we'll ask our community to kind of like prioritize some of these things, because for us it's very important for us to listen directly to the community, to hear their feedback, and more importantly, like because we have the opportunity, like a Discord is a perfect conduit between the fan and the developer and stuff, to where you guys can, anyone can hit us up at any point with like, hey, this might be a good idea, and next thing you know, we might implement it in an update. And there's your dog making a cameo. That's awesome.
You mentioned you touched on using that community and kind of having that strong relationship. Is that something you developed, Yoonsong, with your coming up from the ground up with like being on that side of playtesting and being that that voice that needs to be heard more, or is that just where the industry is? You're seeing more indies work directly with the community and building those strong communities.
It's kind of both, right? Like I guess we just all sit in Discord and chat anyway about games, right? So to have, I guess, work in progress games being shared in there, and people who like following that kind of stuff. And honestly, like half the time we're just chatting with these people. Like it's just normal chit chat stuff that's going on in the game scene, like other development, like other projects that they're working on. They ask us something about Wave Break or an older game, and I think it's just a very natural like social place that I guess.
And kind of on top of, to build upon that as well too, when it comes to like community building or just trying to kind of corral all the people together. Obviously I've had some experience and I kind of know what works and what doesn't work, but really for me, like I've, as the consumer, as like a player, I kind of always wanted to be like, okay, it'd be really cool if a company did this. It'd be really cool if they were to show this, if there's a way to be able to kind of do things in a manner that felt cool to me, like as a consumer. So we take those things into consideration when it comes down to like the tone and the type of like image that we want to project to the to our community, and the fact that like we've been ripped off before, we've been lied to before. There's a lot of different things that other people have done in the past where we've actually learned from other experiences and make sure that we don't want to make the same mistakes. And clearly for us, it's really important for us to be able to kind of like make sure that our community has our trust. Because if you don't have that trust with your community, it doesn't really matter what you put out, or no matter how good something is, people would just not necessarily support it as hard. So
I'd be kind of curious about your so the sort of theme you have for this game. It's got sort of that Miami Vice style, it's people doing the, I don't know if it's actually drugs or if it's more a PG version of that. I mean, it is very cute. I'd be kind of curious to when that theme came along. I know you said when you were originally playing with this idea, it was toy boats. Now it kind of has that gun. It has the gunplay in it, which is interesting that there are kind of other games that are kind of coming in with this skate or rollerblading style with these guns. So it's kind of that great minds think alike thing, which is cool. But I'd be very curious when that whole thing kind of came along, or whether the guns were there from the beginning.
I think it was pretty early on after so we had that early prototype that was very cutesy, and I guess we were focused on the gameplay more there, and then after I guess the response to that gameplay was like really positive. So like, okay, this is we're on the right direction for someone, which is funny. We go back and play that build now, it feels so awful. So I don't know what people are thinking, but I guess up until that point, we hadn't really like deeply thought about what we wanted the final like feel to be. So I guess after we figured out the gameplay, and I can't actually remember if we had guns before or after that, but it was very early on. We added guns, and I guess we wanted to integrate that into the tricking system, and I guess kind of all the pieces moved at the same time. We wanted it to feel like way better. Like when you play SSX Tricky or something, like it's energy, right? And I guess we wanted to capture some vibes like that. We didn't want it to be too like low energy, I guess. We wanted it to be kind of intense, and I guess that aesthetic of all aesthetics, the kind of vaporwavy aesthetic, really gives a lot of I don't know what to call it, like tools to work with to like dial things up. There's like cool fonts and like cool visuals, and just like graphic styling is great to work with, and we can kind of go wild on like colors and effects, and it all meshes together. So it's kind of all those things evolved like at the same time. Like guns were cool for gameplay. The cops and robbers theme like worked well for figuring out like story and background and characters and like what's going on and where the things are. The hotel's like a front for product, stuff like that. So it all just kind of ties in together.
You said kind of testing early on. You said it was testing. Well, were you testing this prototype with your community early on, or was this with people in the team? Kind of who was that with?
At that point, it was mostly internal. I guess we were also working on the VR game, so some people from working on that project would like play some of it. Yeah, I guess we just bounce it around everybody in the team and studio, and like a lot of ideas get thrown around, and a lot of really bad like tests get like quickly made and quickly discarded, I guess. And I
Fail
guess
faster.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We sometimes, if we had a friend visiting town and they come by for lunch or whatever, just like throw the game at them and see what happens, and just chat about it for half an hour, and some ideas come around. I think it was a little bit later that we started doing like I guess public testing through Discord. So
and not to mention like I mentioned prior, like when I first like became known of this project, like we've shown this project to like several different conventions and events, to where fortunately for us, we were able to actually get the build up, get like direct feedback from consumers, from press, from influencers, that we managed to kind of take back to the lab and be able to kind of reformulate and figure out, all right, we'll tweak some of these things here, we'll change some of these things here. And so like on top of the public play test, on top of like showcasing it to like several people that we know, like one of the most important things that unfortunately we don't have right now, which we kind of miss, is being able to go to those conventions to directly be able to kind of get the feedback from the consumer. Because you have an idea of what the game is, and you have an idea of how you think it will do, but then you don't really know until you actually get in front of people. And so for us, that was a very, very valuable time for us.
When you see those people who come back by the booth, like 5 times in one day, you know, or they're like, as soon as the other appointment finishes, they like rush back for another play session. Like watching people play like that, you know, you kind of get an idea of like what's in the right track.
Yeah. I'd say another issue with that too is like I feel like showing it at a convention is like the cure for burnout. When you've been playing your game for so long, you don't even know if it's good anymore. You're just still working on it, trying to make it slightly better. And then when you show it to people, it's just like, oh, okay, that's right. I'm making a game, not just this.
It's definitely refreshing, but I would say I still don't get bored of playing. So I don't know. It's like I still boot it up, and like every time we do a playtest, it's still fun. Like
I would say we're probably more motivated after a lot of these things
yeah, yeah.
because like like the energy that people give, like especially when they're giving us like compliments and stuff like that, you just feel like you're on cloud nine. And so after, like, even though like I'm not sure if other people know, but working a convention is really really hard, and
Mhm.
it's to the point where like mind, body, soul, physically everything gets drained. But then when you leave, you still have that like that positive energy emanating inside you, where like, dude, people really like our game. I'm gonna rest for 3 days, and then I'm gonna go back and go hard on this again. But even then, like you say, 3 days, and like an hour later, you're already working on the game because you know, like there's something to be said about people giving positive reactions and positive energy, and we definitely kind of like live off of that too.
Yeah.
And even with the streams, like the little mini streams that we've been doing, like I was so afraid that people were going to come in and say all these negative things, but it's been very positive and been very very supportive, to where like after the stream, I literally call Ken like, how did I do? Did people like it? And he's like, oh yeah, yeah, this is good, this is good. And we get really really excited, and then next thing you know, our Slack chat is filled with all these little suggestions and little things that we want to look into. So it's definitely a positive experience.
Nice. Yeah, I think you framed perfectly too the how important those physical events are. I mean, you mentioned that's how you guys even hooked up, was your booths were physically next to each other, and there's so many different like relationships that they forge just from physically being there, or people that play it in real time and give you that feedback. And of course, we can't have that right now with this with Corona going on with COVID-19. Is there? Do you think there's still some room digitally to kind of get that that helpful effect across until one day we can go back to normal?
I don't think it can be the same. I mean, you can get something right. Like we can have public play tests, and we get everybody, you know, all the devs and like players jump in a Discord voice chat, and we just like play for an hour or two, and it's you know it's like a game night with your friends on Discord, and you can kind of feel out some stuff that they're feeling, but it's just not the same if you can't see them. You know, the face can't lie, right? Like when someone's like entire world shuts off and like this is all they see, like you know they're into it, right? Or it's like when something goes wrong and you just like you can see the pain on them, and you're like, man, I want to fix that bug so bad, and you can't quite capture that stuff. So you know, I'd like to think there was a way to deal with it, but I don't think you can replicate that experience. But do you know do the best you can in the circumstances.
Right. Yeah, no, I was curious too to get back to Wave Break. So at the once you watch that trailer, watch that gameplay, it seems like such a love letter to Wave Race, to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Diddy Kong Racing, even like a little bit of Twisted Metal in there. How important was it for you guys to take from that inspiration, from growing up and playing those games, but also to forge a new path with Wave Break?
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of games that influence it, and I don't know if we picked any of them in particular. I guess like Tony Hawk obviously is a kind of core like skating mechanics that we build everything off. I think in terms of vibe and style, like Conker's Bad Fur Day is definitely something we go to look at a lot just because it's great.
Such a good game.
And Wave Race 64, like that game felt great. The water was so good. Like it was just we tried looking for like reference material, but there's really not much else that like feels so good, even though the technology in it's so like basic, compared to what we can do these days. Um, but I guess like gameplay wise, it's not racing, so we didn't have too much to pull from that. I think we just kind of mashed together the things we liked that worked. And I guess personally, I just wanted to have features that would increase the skill ceiling. That's kind of what I want to see out of the things that come from other games that go into it. You know, I just want to make it so the really good players can like really shine.
I guess going kind of into the, sort of like the game feel of those games and how it compares to this, because I can't really tell watching with the way you move in water. Is there like a little bit of a squish squash like there would be in more of like a wave race or like a snowboarding game, or is it a little more analog to a skateboarding game? And then how does that kind of compare when you go on to, because it seems like you can drive on surfaces just fine. So how's that kind of the whole thing kind of compare?
So
Are
I guess
you, yeah.
the way the physics work in the water is like absolutely unrealistic, but it feels like you're driving on water. But you know, obviously that responsiveness of like I want to turn and go up this half pipe needs to feel like it would on a skating game. So it's not really logical how it works, but we just kind of massaged it until it felt right. So it's somewhere in between like getting that feel of like driving on water, but when you need to feel responsive, it it just kind of works. Um, it's like a it's like 1,500 tiny little settings all carefully tuned to just feel like it's water, but you can do what you want, you know. So it's a strange in between. And then yeah, you can just drive on surface. I guess we experimented with a few builds that you know maybe the you can't turn properly or the turning or like speed is different, but it just didn't feel good. So we just drive. It's fine.
Sure. I guess with you say it's very responsive on water, but it feels like you're driving on water. Are you kind of using some animation tricks to try and make it feel more like driving on water, even though it's being very responsive?
There's a little bit of animation in the like boat and the player are a little bit separate, but it's kind of more physics dynamic stuff.
Okay.
But really, it's all in the massive chunk of game code that handles like you know for a boat in water, like what happens to it? Does it get pushed this way? Does it tilt this way? If they're thrusting, like how does it respond? It's just a big mountain of code in there.
Right.
I
And
will
then
say I will
go
say
ahead.
this in terms of the gameplay. Sorry to cut you off, but in terms of the gameplay, like um, if you are adept to the Tony Hawk kind of control scheme, this would be like a seamless transition altogether. But with that being said, like the first time, like the difficulty for me was to just kind of figure out how to navigate through the water. And actually, not only that, but we have an accelerator button to be able to actually kind of like help you propel the boat forward. So obviously in Tony Hawk, you don't have a separate button to actually help you to move forward or to push forward and things like that. So the initial part of it was to just kind of get familiarized with the acceleration kind of like mechanic itself. But like it wasn't that hard for me to kind of figure it out. Maybe like one or two kind of playthroughs, and it was pretty seamless. Like you know, if you're used to using the D-pad, definitely I would go with using the D-pad. But you can use the
100%.
analog stick. Yeah. But you also have the ability to kind of control and lock your kind of like camera with the right analog stick as well. So we kind of gave like the players the freedom to be able to kind of like you know be able to move around to make sure that like the movement is seamless. But I will say this, like the when I joined in May last year, they would like like a good majority of the time was focused on tightening up the gameplay controls. There was probably the most important aspect and probably the priority that the entire team was kind of looking into because you know you know it doesn't matter if the visuals look nice, the music's great and everything like that. If the the core gameplay isn't good and isn't responsive, then the rest of the game is not going to do very well. Unfortunately for us, like you know, and you'll be able to see it pretty soon. The gameplay is really tight. So you know, because we have that as a foundation, everything else that we can kind of build upon it will be you know, pretty cool.
Sure. And then, of course, there is one more movement type you have, or at least one more as far as we've seen, which is the walking around, which is really cool that you put that in. And I'm kind of curious how that plays into when we were sort of seeing the multiplayer demos. It looks like that's largely just sort of an option if you want to have a little bit more fine control. But I know you know, with the single player campaign, does it kind of play in a little bit more there? Um, I don't know if you're saying if there's more you control besides boats. You don't have to announce anything here, but I was kind of curious how that plays into the gameplay as well.
I guess so we had an idea for a feature early on that was you know, if you're playing the game and the party is full, that someone could like join your game, or you could put out like a public invite to join the game as a NPC around the stage, and you know, maybe you have a gun, no boat, you're just like chilling in the stage, you know. You remember like playing old Counter-Strike games or something, and people would just stop playing the game and like stack up on each other or something, just silly stuff, right? Like, you know, why not like have a bunch of people like as an NPC in the stage and just do silly stuff and whatever. And I guess over you know, a year or two of dev, we just kind of integrated that, like being out of the boat as a core part of it. So now when you bail, you're physically out of the boat. It's not just an animation, and someone else could steal your boat or blow it up, and you have to get a new one or something like that. But mostly it's just the freedom to just get out and walk when, you know, just because you want to, right? Because
That and
the NPCs can.
and that and the ability, like, because like there's some places that are really really hard to get with the boat. Like you have to time the air properly, you have to hit a certain rail, or there's certain conditions you have to hit to certain places. So we also included that to allow people to kind of like just walk up there and be able to kind of observe a lot of different things without getting frustrated too.
Yeah, it can be useful to like get to us to like, I want to start a combo line from like this point. So you like, you know, walk around, just like get up there and then kick off their combo. And probably, you know, if we had infinite time and money, we'd probably add a way to combo it in. You know, you jump out of the boat like mid. Well, your combo doesn't end, so you can kind of jump out of the boat and like fly through there and like get the boat back and keep going. So you know, sure, if we had more time, we'd probably, you know, you jump out of the boat and like kick off a wall or something and then keep going.
Right.
Just
Can be that whole Battlefield 3 thing where you jump out of the jet, fire your rocket
Yeah.
launcher at the other guy, and jump back in. Well,
Sure,
I
sure.
will say the beep beep noise when the vehicle comes back to you is absolutely, it sounds so satisfying, and I'm sure it is.
Yeah, that was yeah, one of our team members added that like 2 weeks ago. It's hard to imagine the game without it now.
Oh
Wow.
yeah, I mean, I can say probably a couple weeks ago in one of the earlier builds, like when we first got some of like these like final sound effects, it became like a completely different game. Like you get so used to certain things, and all of a sudden now you have like these auditory cues. Now you have little particle effects. Now there's certain things that are coming about to where, like, you know, before we were just like, oh, we're just testing it out and stuff like that. But then like when I got this new build, I spent probably about 2 hours just walking around listening to all this other stuff. And you know, it's been remarkable, the evolution of this game.
Yeah, and you touched on something I wanted to talk about as well, was the music and how that's, you know, how important is that to you with this, especially with it being an action game, a sports action game, and the granddaddy being, you know, Tony Hawk of all of this, and them being so synonymous with music, how important it is to you, for you guys to bring music to Wave Break.
Yeah, it's like you know, alongside the gameplay, visuals, and music is like almost like the three pillars of the game, basically. I think a lot of games, you know, the soundtrack is just kind of a thing that's like thrown in at the end as like background music, you know, and it doesn't really get the love it needs. And I think for this game, we want it to feel like it's not just a game. It's not just the game music, you know. So like we really went out of our way to find some artists that are doing some like really great music in that kind of synth wavy style. And we haven't shown any of the final music set we're dropping on release, and I won't say what we've got in there, but it's great, and I think we'll have a lot more to come in the future. But yeah, I think we take the music really seriously, and we want people to play it and be like, that shouldn't be in a game. That's too cool, you know. Or it's like you would actually go listen to it like outside of the game, it's how you'll feel with the Tony Hawk soundtrack, right? Like I don't know how often I have that THPS2 sound the playlist going, but it's all great stuff.
Right. I mean, if you're wanting players to spend, hours, like you mentioned, just with testing alone, but like hours playing the final build, yeah, that music just keeps people invested, keeps them in, and the hours just melt away as you play with the awesome, soundtrack, and on top of awesome, gameplay as well.
Yeah, I want 15 years from now, someone will be like, oh, I love that song from the Wave Break soundtrack. The same way we all do now with, No Cigar.
Right, or Superman, yeah.
Synthwave can do it. I decided to play for whatever reason Blood Dragon the other day, and I completely forgotten that the song I listen to regularly is from Blood Dragon.
That was really good.
Yeah.
Nice. Now, one really interesting effect or aspect of Wave Break is the fact that you guys are launching on Stadia first this summer. If you can talk about as much as you can about how that came about and how excited you are to be launching on Stadia.
Yeah, I guess around last year, I guess for the whole project, we've been taking it and showing the game to publishers and just trying to get some interest in the game so we can do the full thing. And I guess Google was really into the idea of it, and so we managed to make a nice deal that go first on Stadia, and we get to make the whole game, and it's been pretty great working with them actually. I guess as an engineer, like going onto a console just seems like it's going to be a nightmare, but it's been surprisingly seamless, and actually all the cloud stuff has been pretty nice to work with now that we're all stuck at home.
Yeah,
I don't have to bring lug home like 20 dev kits. So they've been good to work with, and I don't know. I mean, it just feels like Wave Break still. So I think pretty excited to release it on there, see how people like it.
I guess that's something I'm very curious about. I haven't really talked to any devs that have worked with Stadia or any kind of cloud platforms. How's that really changed development as far as, I'm sure most of the time you're testing this stuff on your local rig, but I don't know if it changes when you want to test in the cloud, how long that takes to upload, or, even how you treat rendering graphics. How does that affect the process?
I guess in terms of development of the actual game, like it's pretty much just the same as PC or console. You work on your computer most of the time, and then when you need a final build, you just make one, and that usually takes a couple of hours. Then you got to upload it somewhere. I guess because it's all cloud based, like once the builds are uploaded, it's very easy for the dev team to just like jump on and play. It's very easy to like play a specific version or stuff like that. So it's very convenient like workflow for dev. But yeah, other than that, it's just been mostly the same like dev process. So
that's a good advertisement for Stadia. It's the same.
Yeah, I've tried Stadia personally for a couple of games. They have their it's a promotion right now where you can get some free time playing it, and I was pretty blown away the fact like Destiny 2 runs really smooth. There's another title, PUBG, I got to try. It runs really smooth, so I'm excited with especially a game like Wave Break. It has to that speed has to translate with the input. There's you want to try to remove any lag as possible. So I feel confident that you can achieve that on on these streaming platforms. Now they're all pretty fast. Like I'm pretty blown away that we're in this future now.
Yeah, I was like really worried. Me and the other engineer, like we sat down and had a big brainstorm about how to like deal with the latency and stuff. But we tried to think of some really like crazy ideas of I guess like time rewinding for like the local player and stuff like that. And like honestly, we just play it. It's fine.
Right.
So it's like all the crazy ideas we had. We make some tweaks and stuff to make it feel a little bit smoother, but like all the crazy ideas that we thought up to deal with it, we just didn't really have to use. I was surprised,
Yeah,
no
extra coyote time or anything like that. You just gotta run it like smooth.
Yeah, it's like I could see some cases where some games need stuff like that in certain, I don't know, situations where like different like ways that like visual and timing like sync up. I guess for us, we would have been annoyed at it all day, every day we played it if it was a problem, and our internet is not very great. So,
So you're the best test, pool there by having the worst internet possible, and it still works great.
Yeah, as long as I'm not uploading a build, because then it's it's like 2 seconds of latency, 2 literal seconds, but you know.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the phone call where Kaden's like, "Yo, I need you to go to a McDonald's and test it out there."
Right.
Hey man, that's how I used to play my Mario Kart 3DS back in, or not even 3DS, DS back in the day, because we didn't have Wi-Fi in Podunk, middle of nowhere, so you had to go to the McDonald's to the.
I'm old enough to remember when they actually had like the N64s.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so like I mean, granted, I'm not sure if I want to touch that controller, but but I mean,
Absolutely not.
I'm pretty sure there's a challenge for licking that controller right
Okay.
now. You got to put it up on the TikToks when you're done.
No, it's not worth it, man. Yeah, I wanted to touch base on just your huge portfolio. It's like you guys really, you don't rest on your laurels. It's like you just keep pumping things out, but it's still at a high quality. What is the secret behind your work ethic? You know, what drives you to keep pushing this stuff out and keep innovating?
I think everyone just stays, you know, really focused on what we're doing, and I guess we keep the creative juices flowing with like letting everybody be a little bit experimental and kind of explore interesting ideas. And I don't know, I think everyone on the team is like really motivated to make a good game. And you know, I don't think like as a person like running the company, it's like I can't force them to be like that. They just kind of are, you know, and it's really great. And I guess we just try to let everybody like do the part of game dev that like really like motivates and interests them. And like everyone just does so much work. I don't know, it's like super happy to see every day, you know, people are just cranking out so much stuff. But I guess for the like projects we've done, we usually have 2 teams running. So you know, like the start of Wave Break was like 2 people for a couple of months, just like testing out some art stuff and water stuff and just like basic control tests and stuff. And one of the VR projects was, I guess, like 8 people working on it. And then it's like, you know, as that finishes, like we start to add some people to Wave Break. So there's not really a pause between games. It's just like one's out, next is out, next is out, because we can kind of shift people back and forth between those teams. So there's always like a lot of momentum going, and people get to change up projects, and that keeps things fresh as well. I don't know. I don't know if there's any secrets. We just work hard and
well,
relentlessly.
like I said, these Kalin is and you know the other co-founder Eddie, they're a little bit too modest when it comes down to this, because you know from someone who's been like like you know probably the outsider perspective looking in and stuff like that, like you can totally tell that everything kind of comes from the top and kind of trickles down, because you know both Eddie and Kalin, when it comes to like each of these type of titles, they're always looking to try out new emerging technologies, try out new and innovative things, like the latest things that are coming about, and to kind of tie it all together. That's one of the reasons why we decided to go with Stadia as well too, is because it's a brand new technology. You're venturing into the unknown. It's somewhat kind of scary, but at the same time, it's really, really exciting because no one's really done anything with it yet, and it gives you kind of like this blank canvas to be kind of like the first to try to do some of these things. And when you look at, you know, our previous title, whether it be Fuji, it was a Oculus Quest, you know, exclusive title. I mean, basically, that was the first time they were experimenting with like, you know, in VR, like for the first time they're bringing a game to the Quest. If you look at a lot of these titles that they brought in, they were probably part of like the forefront of like when they first emerged. So when I see Kalin and Eddie, like the environment, the vibe that they created within the office, it's very chill, it's very laid back. Everyone knows exactly what they're supposed to do, but at the same time, everyone knows that when they contribute an idea, it'll get heard. And you know, Kalin and Eddie graciously give these guys the opportunity to kind of explore a couple of things, try out a couple of things, because a lot of these times through these exploration processes, we might find something that we might have never found if we, you know, done it in that kind of way. And so just from my perspective, when I actually kind of see all the stuff that these guys are doing, it's very inspiring. It's how I feel like a company should be. Like, you know, you don't have to worry about office politics. You don't have to worry about like all these other outside factors. It's a very cool kind of atmosphere that these guys have created. And you should take more credit for that, Kalin, because like I know you're always trying to be like, we try and stuff, but these guys have done a phenomenal job in creating an awesome culture within the company.
That's awesome. Yeah, I
I
feel
guess
like you
the-
can see it. Go for it, Gavin.
Oh, I was just gonna say it definitely does. You know, you look through it, does seem like a lot of the stuff you're working on is very much at the forefront, whether it's VR, AR. You know, even again, like I said, the Leap Notion, which not very many people played with.
I mean, if you ask that question in like 5 years, it'll probably be like, why did you guys get into brain implant gaming? Like, whatever crazy thing will be up. I think what makes it interesting is like on a new technology, what's good is completely unknown, and like
Right.
kind of making the previous gen thing on the new gen thing never quite feels right. When you play a D-pad game on a mobile phone, like a virtual controller, it's playable, but it's just not the same, right? And I think there's kind of that opportunity to like, let's figure out something new. This Cosmic Trip probably has, I don't know, like 20 different like locomotion failures in the graveyard, and like 30, 40 different like menu prototypes, before we had this like piano synth, like, I don't know what to call it. The current menu we have, it's like this, see-through like virtual hollow menu. And it's like, it feels so obvious once you've discovered it, but there's like a whole process of figuring out what works. And like, that's super exciting. And it lets you actually like feel something new. You can't feel that you've experienced something new unless it's a like new idea on a new platform. You couldn't have done it on the old platform. It would just be impossible. So it's exciting.
And the best thing about all of this too is like, when I do come into the office, like Eddie or Kalin be like, hey, yo, come over here, try this out. Every time they say that, I'm like, I know I'm about to see some crazy stuff. And so like I wait, like, cause like, when I go to the office in the days they don't say that, I'm like, oh, I'm a little disappointed kind of. But
it's hard to impress.
But to be frank, every time they've shown me, like whether it be in VR, whether through Wave Break or some of the other kind of untitled projects that we have, like I'm blown away that these guys can come up with something. Because like you get to a point where like, oh, everything has been done. Everyone has come up with this idea. There's no other thing that's gonna come out. What's gonna top this? And next day you come in and you're like, oh yeah, I just did something. You want to check this out? And there you go. These guys have figured out how to do it. So it's a joy to work with these guys every day to know that like there's always something cool coming down the horizon. There's always something cool that they're kind of like working on.
Just wait for the next game.
I guess that was sort of the follow-up is with you kind of always exploring whatever's the newest fun, something people haven't really touched yet. Is there anything that you have that's sort of firing off the neurons? I know right now people, SSDs, big SSDs may kind of be I don't know if that's sort of where you're learning or if there's anything that's kind of stoking up the fires that you can talk about. I know you said wait till the next game. You probably don't want to talk about that for a while.
I guess, there's still a couple of ideas we want to explore in VR. So we're probably going to spend a little bit more time in there. I'm personally like really into the brainwave reading headsets, and I think I have every single thing that's under $20,000. And I would love to find a way to get that into the game because that's a super fresh thing. But obviously there has to be. I guess we have to make like responsible business decisions,
Right.
as well. So if there's only 20 people out there with this crazy like brainwave headset, we can't really make a game for it.
Or you just have Wave Break be sort of your Fortnite, right? That's sort of your cash cow, and then you just do whatever with the rest of them.
That's the strategy. if that's possible, I'm okay. I'm okay with that. But I do actually think like brain input in some form or another is going to be something coming down the pipe, and I think some like deeper integration of, I guess, the AI techniques used now, whether in the dev process or in the game itself. I think some like much deeper and like systematic integration of that kind of tech has not really been done in games, and that's two things that I see as like a field that's like waiting. And And I think on the AR, like mobile AR, there's probably some interesting game ideas that I don't think have been explored well. Um, I guess like mobile can be a troubling platform because like free to play is really restricts game design in a lot of ways, and I don't know. There's a lot of factors.
Yeah, absolutely. You said AI in dev. What exactly were you? I haven't heard of this in particular.
So I mean, like using AI to help make the game.
Oh, okay, sure.
So let's say it takes just 4 months for like 3 artists to make a wave break level or something like nonstop. If you can use AI to help out with something like that, and suddenly it becomes one person for 2 weeks, like suddenly the kind of games you can make is different. Like 10 people could make Skyrim in like a month and a half with like some really good application of these technology, and it's like, well, you could just make Skyrim and that would be the first thing you could do, right? Mega World or like the Witcher World or something, but it opens up like a whole new kind of game that's literally impossible to make without those kind of techniques. So that's when you tie that into the dev cycle. I think there's a game that couldn't exist without it waiting to be made. And then in the game itself, we have all the most sophisticated game AIs and stuff, but I don't think these kind of new techniques are being leveraged as like a game that couldn't exist without those techniques. Like NPC agents that are a part of an actual like AI hive mind on a supercomputer that like everybody's interacting with. It's no one can really predict how it's going to play out. Some game like that, but much smarter. Needs someone smarter than me to figure out what it actually is. But I don't know. I see these clouds of like, there's a game in there somewhere, I'm sure of it, and then over here, like this technology, there's definitely a game in there, but you have to dive in to find it.
Sure, absolutely.
That's awesome, man. It's been a blast talking to you guys. We'll let you go, but where can people keep up with the project? You mentioned the Discord. Where can they interact with you guys and keep up with you guys?
You can join our Discord at discord.gg/Funktronic Labs. Like Kalin mentioned before, we're pretty much on there 24/7. So if you have any questions regarding, a wave break or some of the other previous titles, or even if you just have dev questions or anything like that,
so show off your projects.
Yes, and definitely do that. And you can follow us on Twitter at WaveBreakGame, and you can also follow us at Instagram at Funktronic Lab.
Nice. And then Wave Break is coming this summer to Stadia first, so can't wait to play it.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good having you guys.
I appreciate it.
And we would love to extend an invitation out to you guys when all this nonsense is kind of done. If and when you guys have the opportunity and you guys are in LA, please definitely stop by and see some of the crazy stuff that we'll be building. Because then you'll be able to see firsthand how awesome these guys are. And coming out.
I'm bringing my sleeping bag. I'll stay for a couple of days. You're right. You know what? Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Awesome, guys. Appreciate it. We'll let you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.